Welcome. This is Education 1.5, where we discuss the Education Amendment Act. My name is Clement Lizio, and I'm your host. Today we are talking about Section 64 of the Education Amendment Act, which talks about health in schools. But in particular, we are focusing today on Section 64, subsection K, which talks about the appointment of sexual reproductive health personnel in schools. And to unpack this discussion, I'm joined today by Rujeko Chibaya from Fawez and Lloyd Kwambana from Gwen. Welcome.
Thank you, Clemens.
Thank you.
To start our conversation, what has been the situation in schools in terms of sexual reproductive health? Over to you, Lloyd.
Maybe a background to my response to your question. We need to understand what is sexual reproductive health rights. So these are three principles that are distinct, but at the end of the day, they are complementary when you're talking of human rights. It's a concept of human rights when we apply it in terms of sexuality and reproduction. But we are coming from a male-dominated society where certain beliefs and norms have been normalized. And to talk of these issues, it's regarded as a taboo, and I put it in courts, let alone to talk of it in schools, which is another social environment where children are socialized. Not much has been talked about in relation to SRHR, but at this point now we would want to deconstruct that background and say we need to have principles that talk of SRHR. We talk of indivisibility, we talk of unalienability, we talk of universality within schools as a social environment.
Maybe you can come back to those three words. They are very important for us to really understand.
I'll unpack each as I've highlighted. Universality, we're talking of they have to be equal to everyone, regardless of sex. We talk of inalienability, whereby we're talking of the rights from birth. A person has got those rights. Then indivisibility, they need to be cascaded to every person, be it a girl, be it a boy, be it a man, or be it a young woman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Richard, now that the Act provides for the appointment of personnel, sexual reproductive health personnel in schools, we want to understand, are these going to be teachers or they are going to be coming in as health personnel?
It's important that they be teachers because they are trained on how to deliver, So but we then really think that it's important that they be capacitated. I mean, in terms of the content delivery and all. But this area needs a multi-stakeholder approach. It's important that the health personnel and probably the department, the VFU, Victim-Friendly Unit, ZRP, it's important that they hold awareness campaigns in schools because it's really necessary.
Maybe I can come in as an addition to her point. We are saying SHR it's a component that has a lot of information that has to be unpacked. So given this line of background, we are talking of a person who has the technical expertise in cascading the information or the knowledge to the target group. So we would want to appoint a person on the basis of availability within an institution. But we are taking a person who has been taken through in terms of capacity, in terms of the knowledge, to be able to bring dissemination and awareness to different target groups in relation to this subject. So adding to your point, I think it's an expertise area which requires a person to be trained in the field so that at the end of the day we achieve our expected outcomes in relation to SRHR.
But taking into perspective,
yes,
do we have in schools right now teachers who are trained or who are experts in issues to do with sexual reproductive health rights?
We don't have, and at a greater percentage, I would put it that way, we don't have, which brings us a light in terms of a gap, in terms of knowledge gap, in terms of resource gap, which we need to fill now. So our discussion now, it has also to unpack those areas, and at the end of the day, we have key result areas under SHR to say we need a person who is trained to take us through in terms of imparting the knowledge to the target group within certain institutions.
She spoke about it being multi-sector. You want to come in?
Yeah, just to add on to what he's saying, we have seen schools where there are teachers who really major on guidance and counseling. In some schools, unfortunately, I've seen teachers being just picked because maybe they've got a background of psychology and all. But it's really important that they have the technical expertise, the relevant technical expertise, you know, to do
Maybe in addition to that, we have history in terms of our development. We had it called the Karoi Action Plan that was coined around 20 years back. It has a section 47 that talks of the need to have SHR dissemination within a different field, whereby we are saying it's a resource that needs to be unpacked. We're talking of well-being, we're talking of health as a basic right, as I've highlighted in those tenets that I highlight in terms of human rights. It has to be cascaded. It's a need. Given that we need to have them within the schools with much information, with much expertise. And at the end of the day, we achieve our desired results. Yeah. Yeah.
You spoke of guidance and counseling. Does sexual reproductive health rights fall within guidance counseling, and is this being taught in schools?
It does. Yes, we really want to applaud the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. It really forms part of the guidance and counseling, and all these issues that we're talking about are really catered for in the syllabus.
Maybe another point is maybe it comes to issue of content development. We are living in a global village. Information it doesn't lie dormant, but it changes with time. So we also need to develop our content, and also making sure each content is targeting a certain group. So we found information that is relevant to upper level in terms of education. It can be a same syllabus that is being used at lower levels, the talk of grade 7. So that content within a syllabus, that allocation, it has to be developed with time, targeting a certain group.
This is Education 1.5, whereby today we are discussing the appointment of sexual reproductive health personnel in schools. And it's a quite interesting discussion. You have heard them unpacking what sexual reproductive health rights are all about. And you've heard them encouraging to say, we would have the personnel to be teachers who are really trained in issues to do with sexual reproductive health. Welcome back. This is Education 1.5, whereby we are discussing about the Education Amendment Act. And today we are looking at health in schools. And in particular, we are discussing the appointment of sexual reproductive health personnel in schools. What is the situation in the schools? Is this subject being taught? Is it examinable? What is the situation in schools?
Thank you, Clemens. I think there is need, to make guidance and counseling compulsory, because we've seen situations where the learners have highlighted that sometimes it's just there on the period, but the teachers don't really come. So there's really need to make it compulsory and probably make it examinable as well. It's quite important because the elements that are taught, they are quite critical. Life skills and all.
Yes.
Thank you.
So maybe if I'm to come in, I would want to bring critical elements. How far have we gone in taking this subject as a standalone subject? We have physics, we have mathematics, we have other subjects who are treated as standalone subjects. But this one is taken as an extracurriculum subject. But in terms of development of our knowledge and education development within a setup.
Is it both at the primary and secondary, whereby it is taken as an extracurriculum?
Yeah, both. Okay. But now we are trying to put an advocacy platform to say we need to have it as a separate subject on its own, whereby the content or the knowledge or the information is pegged in a certain way that the target group is going to achieve the result that we want. And at the end, we also need to bring the factor in of examinable of the subject. Do we have a test? Do we have an assessment of the subject to see how far has these children achieved the knowledge that we want them to have at the end of the day in relation to this as a subject?
You spoke of the results that we want.
Yes.
Maybe we need to unpack these results to say what is the advantage of teaching sexual reproductive health rights in schools?
As I've highlighted earlier in the first session, we are saying we have a society that we are living in. In terms of the rites of passage, as a child is being socialized, there are certain elements that cannot be discussed, which are regarded as a taboo. But coming in now of this subject, we are saying we need to deconstruct that mindset and be part of a global village that is developing in terms of sexual reproductive health rights as a human right. We talk of the Universal Human Rights Development of 1948. It has principles that says we need to have information within different environments.
Yes.
Education, schools being part of another social environment. So we are saying it has to be treated as a standalone entity, as a standalone subject, whereby we are saying a policy needs to be enacted along those lines to say how best do we need to develop this subject. At the end of the day, which human resource needs to be bring on board. At the end of the day, we are universal with other partners in different areas. Because we also need to talk of the issue of different case studies of different countries that have developed along these lines. As Zimbabwe can't be lagging behind, we also need to be part of that movement in terms of knowledge development along this subject.
Yeah. In the first segment, we both agreed to say that teachers should come in and teach these the sexual reproductive health rights. I want to find out from you whether teachers in their teacher training curriculum are being trained about the issues to do with their sexual reproductive health rights, or it's a new thing that needs to be introduced to teachers.
They are being trained. They are being trained, and after they complete their course, they have the knowledge. But now the aspects of implementation now, that's where we also need to come in.
What is happening in terms of implementation? What I know you spoke of it being examinable. What else would you expect it to be?
We need to have assessments as guided by different treaties that speaks on human rights, to say, are we in line with those guidelines in terms of dissemination of information, in terms of sexual reproductive health rights. At the end of the day, our assessment or our monitoring or our evaluation is informed by a certain standard procedure that has been set as initiated by our Minister of Education. So it has to be clearly laid down in terms of assessments. So an examination is drafted as informed by a certain policy. So there's something that needs to start for another step to happen. So there are different areas that we need to look at. One point, that is issue of examination, and not taking it as extra curriculum, but as a subject which is standing on its own.
So what it means now, what it means, maybe coming to you, Rijeko, is that there should be a difference now in terms of what is being taught in terms of sexual reproductive health rights at primary level, at secondary level, or at different levels within primary or secondary.
Yes, information has to be age appropriate, and I really want to applaud again the ministry. I've seen, although it's still a draft, they've drafted the content for the guidance and counseling subject, which is really age appropriate. So we really want to thank the ministry for that. But I would also want to advocate maybe to have a teacher who is only responsible for guidance and counseling.
At both primary and secondary?
It's really quite important.
Why is it? Why are you saying it's quite important? Because you know, at primary we have a teacher who teaches both English, mathematics, and so forth.
Because this particular area requires, some technical expertise, which needs, continuous capacity development and all, and it's really important. I have a daughter whom I've asked whether they are being taught guidance and counseling, and it's not being taught, and I thought it wasn't fair. Yeah, we really need this subject to be compulsory.
I would want to come in a diverse interpretation of the implementation of this subject. It's a multi-stakeholder approach that is required. Maybe that we can term as a movement building approach, whereby relevant stakeholders need to be part of this implementation.
And who are these relevant
We talk of the ministry, we talk of development partners, we talk of the Ministry of Health. They also have an input in this area, in this field. So if we are coming from different angles of platforms in terms of development of this as a subject, we need to have our heads together, and our concerted efforts at the end of the day will achieve the results that we want.
Not forgetting to mention the victim-friendly unit. It's important, it's quite important that the schools partner with that department within the ZRP. It's their role, really, in terms of raising awareness on violence against children and all, because it's one thing for them to be able to report when they don't know what abuse is. So it's quite important that awareness campaigns are held in schools. and in communities that we live in.
This is Education 1.5, and we're discussing today about sexual reproductive health, the appointment of personnel in schools. And you have had a quite impressive discussion on this, whereby we are encouraging that the personnel that will be appointed are teachers that are specifically trained on issues to do with sexual reproductive health rights. And they've pointed out to say the subject needs to be a standalone subject that is assessed and examinable. Welcome back. This is Education 1.5, whereby we continue our discussion on the Education Amendment Act. And today we are discussing on the issue of appointment of reproductive health personnel in schools. Joining us in the discussion now is Olin Matambo. But Rujeko, before we went to the break, you spoke about the issue of raising awareness in the communities, and I had to cut you short. Maybe we can take it further.
Yeah, it's quite important that the parents and the communities know that this subject is really critical. And coming back to guidance and counseling itself, I've seen a great need in trying, we should try and strengthen the teaching of it, because we've also seen learners who really feel the way it's being delivered, I don't know the correct way to say, it's quite boring, and we thought maybe if we could use edutainment, for example. Information has to be child-friendly as well.
Maybe you need to expand further on edutainment, because it might be a new term.
Technology, let's use TVs, let's use DVDs, let's use, I don't know, computers, at least if they are able to watch videos, maybe it will make them,
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate.
An example of what we have, what we have been using in guidance and counseling, are the songs that the children enjoy to listen to. There's a song called "Don't Touch." In this song, the children will be touching their private parts, and then they will be saying "Apapangu don't touch, Apapangu don't touch." By doing that, they are internalizing their information.
Can't you demonstrate? Can't you demonstrate?
Apapangu don't touch, Apapangu don't touch. So by doing that, they are learning, and at the same time, they are entertaining themselves.
Exactly.
And I know you are working in airport. How have you been making it make sure that the community is aware of these issues to do with sexual reproductive health rights?
Okay, we work with children. We work with girls from 13 years to 18 years, and we offer psychosocial support to those children. And in these psychosocial support sessions, we talk about issues to do with menstrual hygiene, issues to do with sexual and sexual exploitation and abuse. So that's how we have managed to sensitize the community.
You spoke about sexual abuse and so forth. The referral process, Rujeko, what is it like in schools?
I wouldn't want to dwell much on the referral procedures in schools, but what I would want maybe civic organizations to really advocate for is, to try and make sure that schools prioritize the 72-hour period, because we've seen cases where the guidance and counseling teachers indicate that the admin, sometimes they delay processes when abuse cases are reported through school structures, and I think it's really important that they call directly the Ministry of Health or any other organizations probably working in those particular districts to make sure that at least the 72-hour period is well taken care of, the PEP for pregnancy and the PEP for
to
HIV
add on to
and
what
AIDS.
she has said, on the referral pathway, the children are being abused in the sense that they are being questioned. For example, they are in school and this child has been raped or something. The teacher asks her what has happened, and then the teacher goes to the headmaster, and then the process becomes long. So this child is being raped twice. She's being psychologically affected. So what should happen is maybe a child reports to one teacher, and then the teacher reports directly to the police or to the clinic before the 72 hours.
Just to add on to what she's saying, you know, we have seen cases where learners are being, survivors rather, re-traumatized. The teacher asks the question, the school head, the deputy, you know, by the time they go there, they are tired. It has to be user-friendly. The referral pathway has to be very much user-friendly in trying to protect
you spoke about the
survivor.
72-hour. Maybe you need to unpack it for us to understand what it means when you talk about the 72-hour period.
Okay, we are talking about prevention of HIV and AIDS and pregnancy and the drugs that are administered by the Ministry of Health and some other organizations who are, experts in that area.
So in terms of the appointment of sexual reproductive health personnel in schools, do you think, like you pointed out to say the teacher, do you think this teacher now must be able to report directly to the police or jump the headmaster, the protocol, or what? Because
that's exactly how I feel. Referral pathways should just be shared within the district, should be shared with schools. And it's better to report after the necessary precautions have been taken. Really.
You want to come in?
We need to prioritize
the referral pathway should be as short as possible. It shouldn't be long.
And you think the appointment of sexual reproductive health personnel in schools will shorten this?
Yes, I really feel that way. And let's also not forget about the access to justice aspect of it. The first person to be told then automatically becomes the first witness. And the moment they tell the it then delays even the access to justice.
And the issue of confidentiality.
Exactly.
Well. Yeah.
So it's really critical.
Yeah, it's really critical to so we are in agreement that the appointment of sexual reproductive health personnel in schools will shorten the referral period.
Yes.
Do you have anything to add before we wrap up the program?
On the referral pathway?
Yeah, in general?
On the referral pathway, we are using a multi-sectoral approach. This is when we are including the police, the VFU, the victim-friendly unit. We include the health personnel, and we also include the legal representatives.
Legal representatives, and how do these legal representatives come in now in a school setup?
In a school setup, suppose obviously the issue is going to end up in the hands of the police. So that child that has been accused needs a legal representative.
Rujeko, maybe your last words?
I wanted to talk about, the need to even demystify the court processes, even to the educators themselves, because some of them are not even comfortable with court processes. Like I mentioned before, the first person to be told is the first witness, but the court processes sometimes are not. The educators do not really feel comfortable with the court itself, and it's important that we bridge this gap so that we don't disadvantage the survivors. Child safeguarding is everyone's responsibility when it comes to these issues, and they've got a role to play.
This leaves me to thank you, Rujeko and Olin and Lloyd previously, Mashuma, Notenda. This is Education 1.5, and we've been discussing today about appointment of sexual reproductive health rights. And we have heard them saying that the appointment of sexual reproductive rights personnel in schools will shorten the referral period. Thank you.